Press. And I'm starting right at 3 p.m., knowing that maybe some guests will be in the electronic waiting room, ready to come in or joining us as I speak, just so we can keep time. Changing to online events like this afternoon was one of our ways of being really flexible with the times we're living in. But it has opened some doors, including we can be over 100 miles away and out of state and out of the country and still a fundraiser like this, which is great. I'd like to mention just a quick couple of housekeeping details, such as they are during Zoom. So audience members all of you are going to be muted by the host, who is my colleague Stella Baratlis. And then this will shift and open up during the Q&A session. And also our event is going to be recorded, live streamed. So if you prefer not to be seen, because if you have those options, there's windows where you're visible. If you prefer not to be seen, you can just click stop video. You can go to your menus and stop the video, or even, yeah, there you go. So you can also change your name. There's other fun stuff to do on the Zoom options. I'm really to be your MC along with Elliot Shane, who's the co-host, and my colleagues Stella Baratlis and Camille Norton are working behind the scenes to make sure that this event runs smoothly. It's such a special moment for us. 16 Rivers Press, a Northern California collective, is celebrating years of commitment to publishing fine local poets from Northern California region. Now 21 years, a terrific accomplishment for a small press. Press members, volunteer hours, and countless donations have brought us to this moment, 21 years after the press was founded by the original members, including Terry Arrett, Jackie Cudler, Carolyn Miller, and Valerie Berry. Elliot, did you want to?
Yes, I wanted to just say something about the founding of the press and the collective. And so just bear with me for pontificating, but I'm very proud to live in the Bay Area. It's a progressive political place, and it has political roots from the 60s, as we all know, and even before that, that see collective action as something really, really important to a democracy and to respect for all human beings. And, those of you who were around in the 60s and 70s know how popular collectives were. You also know how quickly they often failed, but they were a good idea. And we are carrying that tradition. 16 Rivers is carrying that tradition of making decisions collectively. We work for no money. We just put in our time and effort because we believe in the cause and try to publish good poetry. And I'm extremely proud to be part of a collective. And I want to emphasize that word. And so my respect and appreciation for the original founding members is very powerful. So that's all I wanted to say about collective. So back to you, Maya.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elliot. By the way, there are 2 ways to donate online. And Elliot will tell you all about donating while we're on the Zoom meeting. But if you prefer to go online at our website, you can donate through the PayPal and also through Fundly, which Stellar has organized a Fundly drive. So if you click on the photographs of the readers, our featured readers today, that'll take you to the Fundly donation page. I want to list a very small subset of our recent accomplishments, which include 2 very successful anthologies, the award-winning America, We Call Your Name, featuring poems by Matthew Zapruder, our reader for today, Camille Dungy, Brenda Hillman, Sheslaw Miwash, and there's a brand new video on the 16 Rivers webpage, also sort of in that, a lot of these key items are on the right corner of the webpage as you open it. And this is a beautiful video of a reading that was compiled together by BlueStack Media. And also want to talk a little bit about other accomplishments, including the previous anthology, The Place That Inhabits Us. Recent recognition of 16 Rivers poets, some of whom were members of our press and some are still members, include a 2020 Northern California Book Award nomination for Camille Norton's A Folio for the Dark, a 2020 Southern Indiana Review Michael Waters Poetry Prize for Aaron Rodoni's new And If the Woods Carry You, and a 2019 Independent Publisher Book Award for America We Call Your Name, edited by Murray Silverstein. Other recognition for recent works includes 2017 National Indie Excellence Award in Poetry for Tiller North by Rosa Lane, a Northern California Book Reviewers Award nominations for Body in Good Light by Aaron Rodoni, for that was in 2017, for Alkali Sink by Stella Beratlas in 2016, and for Lucky Break by Terry Errett in 2008. Lynn Knight won the 2013 Stephen Dunn Prize for her poem Smoke. Jackie Cudler, one of the founding members, received the Marin Poetry Center Lifetime Achievement Award in 2010. And Dan Bellum won a 2009 California Book Award for his book Practice. Now you can see I'm going in reverse chronological order. There are just so many awards, and so that's just a small subset of achievements. The list of achievements is really long, and starting today's program, I'm very excited to introduce our three readers from three new books that came out in 2020 from 16 Rivers Press. I'd like to introduce Patrick Cahill, who will read from his new book, The Machinery of Sleep. Patrick was editor of Ambush Review, a San Francisco-based literary arts journal, and contributing editor for the anthology Digging Our Poetic Roots from Sonoma. Patrick.
Thank you, Maya. I'm going to read a short prose piece from The Machinery of Sleep called Days Like This. The jacaranda's lavender petals fell through the night and fell through the day. Hadn't they removed the tools in the bodies yet? She let him talk, she imagined, for 30, 40 minutes to her sleeping phone. She steps out into the lavender drifts. The air muted, humid, slows the hours of her acceleration. The black phoebe spreads its wings and fans its tail in a dusty patch of sunlight. Its brown feathered edges remind her of, among a red profusion of climbing bracts, clusters of eyes, although the reverse is also true. She begins to paint the portrait of a dog. This has happened before. Paints instead a spider skittering into abstraction beyond the frame. There where the story and desire begin.
Thank you, Patrick.
Welcome.
Terry Errett, co-translator of the new poetry book, Plagiarisms, Plagios, poems by Mexican poet Ulalume González de León, translated from Spanish. Terry?
Thank you, Maya. I am going to screen share so that those of you who are familiar with Spanish can see the poem that I'll be reading in its original Spanish language. And I hope you can see that. Along with the Spanish, you see a couple of photographs of Ulalume González de León. She was born in 1928 in Montevideo, Uruguay. She lived most of her life in Mexico and became a naturalized Mexican citizen in 1948, always considered herself a Mexican poet. She was an essayist, short story writer, a translator, and a co-editor with Octavio Paz of two literary journals, Plural and Vuelta. She passed away in 2009. The poem I'm going to read is called Inventario Inventory. I take out my collection of antiques, clean them, polish them, so they don't notice death has begun to tarnish them. Old projects I never got around to, but are still ticking. Eternities of imitation passably sketched. The urge to take off my shoes and run along the edges of the sea. Dreams to be forgotten upon waking. A box with lots of rattle and no nuts. Imaginary devices for learning to say goodbye. Fabric of caresses that leaves one naked upon dressing. Secondhand words I bought for peanuts. Various volumes of love's labors lost. The encyclopedic dictionary of childhood's green paradise. A course in swimming against the tide of death. Instructions for how not to desire a house of one's own. A scratched record that repeats always to no one. Surprises unopened because no one is even there to surprise. A mirror of 1,000 leaves with variations on the face I don't dare recognize. And that kiss, I don't know if past or future. I think I'll wear the day I die. Maya, you are still muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. That's nice. You got to hear me say something without saying it. Or you didn't. Elliot, I want to introduce Elliot Shane. His new book of poems from 16 Rivers Press is A Distant Sound. His previous publications include American Romance and Westering Angels, both available from Zeitgeist Press. Elliot?
Thank you. I just want to say, Terry, that was a beautiful poem. I was actually listening. Wow, stunning. I'm going to read a poem. I don't know if Ken Haas is here, but he is a benefactor for our press, and he's a friend of many of ours, and he likes this poem. And he suggested I read it at a reading I was going to do, and I didn't. So I'm going to read it now. So Ken, if you're around, or even if you're not around, Ken, I'm reading this for you. It's called The Joys of Sorrow. I was bartending at the Chez Paris on November 7th, 1991, when suddenly a man walked in as grim as a Russian, with a map of Vietnam tattooed down his arm, flanked by rifles still blazing, and placed a tensed hand to the polished pine I drop our town's finest drinks on. He ordered shots of gin and began to groan before they came. So my regulars, June and Candy, Mickey and Darnell, halted their chatter to inch toward him as if a world were opening, the way those vast doors at the plant down on High Street open and out rolls exactly what we need. Darnell was the first to get touched, as his own tattered skin sent bone up the neck of the man to work his childhood. And before that, the wandering of stars. And Candy moved in too, unearthing a love she had buried. So I withdrew to lay the stylus down on new sounds of sin, for there's likely tomorrow, and the rain in the parking lot falls on cars that, like jellied cells in our veins, take us from here to the oyster opening, which is the true work of God.
Well, thank you so much, Elliot, for that poem. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce poet Prageetha Sharma. Her collections of poetry include Bliss, The Opening Question, which won the Fence Modern Poets Prize, Infamous Landscapes, Undergloom, and her new Grief Sequence that was published in 2019. Prageetha has spoken of her work in terms of thought rather than narrative. In Willow Springs, she noted, it's important to explore a variety of cognitive experiences in the poem rather than just telling a story. Prageetha Sharma's parents emigrated from India in 1969, and she was raised as a Hindu. And she's acknowledged the influence of her parents' religion on her poetry. I'm gonna quote her here. I was taught to honor knowledge and books like a religion. And so for me, poetry keeps this relationship close, true, and active. Prageetha Sharma attended Simon's Rock College of Bard as an undergrad and earned her MFA from Brown University and MA in Media Studies from the New School. Her honors include the Howard Foundation Award, and she has taught at the New School, Goddard College, University of Montana, Missoula. She is now the Henry Lee Professor of English at Pomona. She was the Henry Lee Professor of English at Pomona College, as well as the founder and president of the conference Thinking Its Presidents, Race, Creative Writing, and Literary Studies. Please welcome Prageetha Sharma.
Hi, everybody. I'm still here in Claremont at Pomona, and it's just a pleasure to be here and support 16 Rivers Press, and just a wonderful audience. And I see lots of friends here, and also wonderful smiles. So, and beautiful poems. That was just extraordinary to just get a tasting of some extraordinary poems. Thanks for having me. And I want to say, please support this press. And it's just, I just admire the model of a collective and what it does and how it just keeps us committed to poetry and publishing. I was going to read several poems from Grief Sequence and several new poems. And I'll explain a little bit about the new project. Grief Sequence, I'm kind of self-conscious about how they are ruminating over the subject of grief. And so many of us have had experiences of loss and have had to explore our identities with loss, and then how we move forward when we lose a loved one and what the experience is. So I thought I'd read some of these. I was inspired by Roland Barthes' Morning Diary, and so the book starts off with an epigram from that, and that frames a little bit of how the structure of these poems work. Not to suppress mourning, suffering, the stupid notion that time will do away with such a thing, but to change it, transform it, to shift it from a static stage, stasis, obstruction, recurrences of the same thing, to a fluid state. Roland Barthes' Morning Diary. I also want to say it's such a pleasure to read with Matthew. I love his poems. Hi, Matthew. I think I'm trying to give you some jovial between some of these really dark, sad poems. This poem is after the poet Alice Notley, who wrote so powerfully on grief, and with her lyricism that really takes us into these ethereal and imaginative and mythological spaces. On seclusion and looking out, after Alice Notley. Seclusion may kill your heart in the process of producing the love-stained stench in your poems, the ones containing boundaries of shame with their sober problems, bits describing loss, mirroring its inward entanglements, glow torches you have never seen before. You light them with two selves and don't wait for anything to flicker false. You can discern the lantern of a falling man who burned down his desire with tiny, humiliated gestures. The mountain peak so high, thus you believe it gives you the one majestic evening you earned. Its embrace is a gentle coercion into wide wilderness, an amenable tyranny of its expansion. Grief's artillery to fill all of the black clouds that sallow blue sky, painting it with electric photographic sweeps. You have to find your strength in this. So this is a two-part poem. One thing, I've been 5 years out of the loss of my late husband, Dale. So Dale died of esophageal cancer. He was diagnosed November 14th, 2014, and he died January 14th, 2015. So we had 2 months from diagnosis to death. And the thing with these poems is he fell unconscious from a secondary tumor. And so with esophageal cancer, there's secondary tumors are the brutal ones. And with that, I think what I started to realize in piecing this loss was that he was a complicated person. And so I do disclose this now, but he was an alcoholic. So I had to sort of put myself together and explore just his personality and who he was, and my love for him, and my challenges too. So you will see that in the poems. So I try to be as honest, because grief is we with our grieves, we try to be as honest as we can with them, and our poems work through everything that somebody is. So, complicated spiritual grief, part 1. It was violent, and it wasn't. It was violent because it was the kind of cancer to which people refer as beastly, as pure evil. And though I do not really believe in a Christian God or devil, I was left facing one. I'm a non-believer. When I faced it, all I had was his past before the cancer, and what was leading up to it, which led me down his rabbit hole, which may have included a brain tumor and many other tumors, all the spindly parts, tumor-shaped, even things painted for me by his admirers, some faulty, some careless, spindly grievers. I couldn't look at any of them as they kept metastasizing, but that was an action I knew was not mine to claim, but through my affections for my beloved. How could I not love some of his friends or students? How is it that I settle on these feelings as he disappears? Before I read the second part of this poem, complicated spiritual grief is when grief extends and goes beyond what everybody agrees is that kind of natural period, and you ruminate over features of grief that you expected yourself to be over. So that's why I thought those titles were really important. The second part is we both taught a film class, a film and literature class called, I taught it, but I would invite him as a guest because he loved the films. He taught in media studies. And it was on Polanski and Cassavetes. So I'm referring to the film Husbands, if anyone here has seen that film. So complicated spiritual grief, part 2. Because I'm the kind of non-believer who believes in the culture around me, I was watching for fragments to arise out of our habits, such as watching Mad Men or thinking about Mad Men. As Dale always said, men who are always falling from buildings out of fear, anguish, alcoholism, a particular self-destruction from self-annihilation, pinhole pains. Like in Cassavetes' Husbands, there were these men. I found his notes for teaching that film, and at first I thought it was his personal confession, but it wasn't. It was a list of teaching notes. Infidelity, vomiting, being a father, being a husband. I thought about his sonic piece titled Sorry About the Rage. I was sorry about it too. So what now? I grieve. I lust for company that I can't ask for. I turn into my own madman. Can I do this? Did he enter my body, his energy? Can I be him, lusting for himself? And some of these are longer prose poems. So this is a death sequence. And I don't think I have to explain it. Sequence 7. I thought he was over-medicating himself and planning his suicide. I took the pills away from him. He looked defeated. He said as much. I felt sorry for both of us. His expressions held this enormity in a seared, exhausted center. Spatial discomfort started to affect him, but didn't take hold till the next day, when he started to lose consciousness and rattled the house yelling about thieves, robbers, drunks, and pill snatchers. We didn't know what was going on. The tumor was rapidly metastasizing its mass through his cerebellum. His body became harder to manage, and he sprang fearfully through the house, tugging violently at his bile duct tube. Asia and I camped in the front rooms. The last night of intimacy, of lucidity, unbeknownst to me, we sat together huddled, and I caressed him, cradling his arms, his legs, and his penis. I was sure we had time left for more, but this was the last time he spoke and searched my face and looked at me with a recognition I understood. It's how we moved out of consciousness, and I'm haunted by those last days before we succumbed to hospice. I remember how stunning he was, resting in bed the week before in our library with a cornflower blue sheeted bed prepared lovingly by Ashby and Spider. In that bed, an unofficial hospice, he had a look of wonder when we put movies on. He excited over Wilson, the ball, and Castaway, and stared unblinkingly at Tom Hanks. We giggled over this and appreciated how Andrew put the Eno station on next, and Asia lit and framed this sheeted bed with twinkling lamp and illuminant. Bulbs Dale found soothing. We all watched him compose in the air to Philip Glass. I wish that we could have unleashed him to his afterlife then. That's what he would have wanted. A release to his own universe, sonant and material, an ethereal ball, an awkward Tom Hanks, a Wilson, and a castaway in a glittering hand-printed sea. This death sequence was the one I wanted for him. And I'll just read one more from this book. And this is a love poem. I fell in love with a widower who helped me with this grieving experience, and he lost his wife in the late 90s and became my friend for a long time. And so I'm grateful, and I think people need each other. So this is a love poem with songs in it. Abide. You have gone to get a haircut in Kirkland, but before you left, you rubbed my arms to warm them out of the blankets with a dearness that I thought I would never find. When you grow older, I fret that you will die too. You will tell me that I conflate the stars with tombs. I sang you Earth, Wind, and Fire's reasons, and we folded into the Delphonics. Didn't I blow your mind this time? And I said you don't even know you did. You were too modest to even think you could. And you know somewhere hidden, we live now to solve our soft heart's problems, which come from the fallen places where they are the raconteurs who died on us. They took up the largesse of the art of death. But we don't care who had the better lover, the better spouse, the kinder or more considerate one. Now we can just take this morning and stretch out a line of aporia and an aphoristic single-sided horizon of trees, buildings, and sky. read a few poems from my new manuscript. This one, I think, kind of explores many different themes. I was inspired by the painter Barnett Newman, and I was inspired by this piece of his One Mint One, and it's One Mint with the number 1 is the title of this and the series. But I'm titling my new poems, my new collection of poems called One Mint, and then it's WON, one. And I wanted to think through abstract expressionism, psychoanalysis, the Upanishads, New Age representations of the East, and ideas of Hinduism. Now that I am both, I'm culturally a Hindu, but after Dale's death, I explored atheism in a really kind of, I do see I think Hindus can be atheists, but that's a whole other conversation. So I've been exploring all that. My dad's a priest, so I'm glad he's not. Well, I mean, he wouldn't care. I mean, he'd be fine to have a conversation about this. But I'll read a few poems about, but also I'm writing about lots of things like cruelty and racism and our current president. So I'll start with metaphorically charged. I meant well and resisted comparisons for a while because those who might cajole me into finding their inaccuracy accurate need likenesses. I was meant to find myself inside a metaphor, but I wasn't there and felt disillusioned. Instead, I built the word with the bricks of what comparison might mean with another suffix. What I meant was I was keen to add nouns. I wanted to add wound to the comparison and build its condition to be matter of fact. I found the condition of the wound to be built into its state of cruelty. She said they have wounds too, and that's why they feel this way. I said I'm not trying to wound them, but they like thinking of my wounds in a certain way. I find their wounds to affect cruelty, and mine did not attend the same effect. I'm angry at those who've been economical about what I might have meant. I'm despairing because I created meaning from a grievance nobody dared to own. They wanted the grievance to be possessed after it was vetted, and I didn't want to give it to them. And then they lied about what they thought of comparisons, which are metaphors lying about what they said they mean. This is just about thinking about the term therapist versus counselor. In some places I live, everybody refers to a therapist as a therapist, and some people refer to a therapist as a counselor. And so I'm being finicky about the terms. And I'm thinking about right now, our current state of things. Therapist versus counselor. I prefer therapist because the term counselor suggests the patient is not a patient, but a passerby in need of menial advice. Did you grow up by the sea or close to its New England windows? Did your psyche let in the tranquility of being near the sea? I pretend I did so I can learn more about the illustrative tide, see if it helps me breathe, if it calms my innards. But I find domestic interiors soothing, like this sofa and its plush. Therapists have permanence in their furniture. I have shame that I share my sorrows and fears with the wrong people, except for my therapist, a kind gravedigger excavating the figurative despair, helping me find the sweetest and bluest violets, the ones that counselors might not mention. I recount the flowers I continue to like despite what's outside of this window's frame, a troll government, an authoritarian we're trying to forget in here. And I think I'm going to just end on this last poem. A 1-1. In it, I found that the political discourse would love its ethical moon, a wonderment, a one sum, bewitching affinities built upon antinomies, abstract, an expression, a wool cap of ornament for the sake of weather. Loving him helpless anew helped, loving her helplessly anew helped, leaving it all behind helplessly helped, Building around the moribund became a kind of blessing. I left constituents around the number 1, and I won, and I felt simple or glad, or finally incandescent and comfortably large in my honesty, a kind of hanging of the rituals, the clothes, the sense of living in them upright. I felt trouble pinging from my thumb muscles, but I ignored the throb. I looked out and into a dense and driven fog and said goodbye to its flavor. I said goodbye to more than 10 years of saying, will you please love me? I wanted to birth a kind of abstract expressionism of the merely objective and the racialized lover of things. One mint or ornament, or I won an ornament, or I loved an ornament, and the one-ment of myself resolved. I resolved, and thus I became into myself a one that I thought would never be allowed. And I moved outside of the fog into a place that signified art. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prageetha. It's amazing reading.
I'm going to help us transition here. Thank you, Maya. And Prageetha, very powerful, deeply moving. So it's a little odd that I'm going to talk about money for a minute, but I'm going to talk about money, but then you're going to hear the beautiful guitar of Patrick's son, Aiden. So with that music, I would hope we can all process a little bit some of the emotions that Prageeta's beautiful poems evoked in us. If you haven't, so bear with me, I feel funny doing this now, but if you haven't already gone to 16rivers.org, you might want to do it now if you want to support us. And there are 3 very easy ways to support us at this time. We're only going to take 5 minutes, and then we're going to go to Matthew. On the website, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a donate button with like a cursive writing across it. Not up in the banner, but on the main page. Click on that, it will take you to PayPal. Below that is the image for this reading with Matthew and Prageeta's beautiful photographs there. Click on that. It will take you to our Fundly campaign, and you can donate that way. And the third way you can donate, which might be the easiest, is to go into the chat room, and there should be easy links for donating there. Why donate? Why poetry now? I just want to say a word or two about that. Prageetha was referring to the condition of our society today. I mean, I don't need to say it, we all know. Something has to change. Consciousness has to change if we're going to get out of this, both our ecological and our political disasters. There's many ways to change: meditation, commitment to dialogue, psychoactive drugs. But why don't you try poetry if you haven't? I mean, you probably all have. Poetry helps the mind change too. It requires us to bend and stretch in order to bring together disparate images, disparate ideas, and pull them together into a whole. That's really something a lot of, when we're stuck in our daily life, we don't do. I do think that's why poetry can help us now in this moment of struggle. It also fosters empathy for a lot of reasons. Prageeta's poems just gave a perfect example of how poetry fosters empathy. But it also helps us understand the complex nature of human beings. And with that, then we are more forgiving when someone comes across as, excuse my French, an asshole. We might be able to understand that there's more to it than that. And reading poetry and digesting poetry enlarges that capacity to hold so many multifaceted concepts at once. Emily Dickinson is my favorite poet to quote. So I'm going to end this little thing with a quote from her. She says, poetry is difficult. We all know that. And you have to spend time with it and be patient. But Emily Dickinson says, I know nothing in the world that has as much power as a word. Sometimes I write one and I look at it until it begins to shine. So if you believe in what we're doing here, please, while the music is playing for the next 5 minutes, go to the website or go to the chat and donate and help us keep these books coming. And I'll be back in 5. Oh, you're sure I'm muted.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm just going to play a few pieces for you. I'm going to play a small prelude by the Baroque composer Handel. I'm going to play a traditional Scottish ballad called Mary Hamilton, and then a short guitar arrangement from West Side Story. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Aiden. That was beautiful. And welcome back, y'all. So you know what? You know what's kind of missing is we don't have the oohs and the ahs. We don't have laughter. Like we don't have humor and stuff. Like so I'm just going to imagine you all chuckling a bit. I'm gonna try to say something funny somewhere in here. But my job right now is to introduce Matthew Zapruder. It's an incredible honor to introduce him. He's not only one of our most significant contemporary poets with books that have been notable books, New York Times notable books, etc., Sun Bear. And now he has his new book, Father's Day, which did get nominated for the Northern California Book Award this year. So one could go on. He's an editor at Wave Books, and they just got a book nominated for a National Book Award. So the guy knows what he's doing. And he writes beautiful, moving poetry. But I'm going to introduce him. Let me be unorthodox and try to be a little humorous to just change it up a bit. Let me read from one of the poems of his new book, Father's Day, right here. It's called The Poetry Reading. At the poetry reading, I am listening to the endless introduction. The poet, young poet, but Matthew, I guess you're still young. The young poet waits for a cloud of applause through which he will go to his doom. But I am starting to know it will never end. It will go on for years. Then at last I will die. Then at my reading in hell, this same one with the black eyeglasses with his zombie theories will once again appear. Okay, so that's me. I'm the guy with the black glasses and the zombie theories. So here are my zombie theories about Matthew Zapruder's work. I'm going to read something I wrote. Matthew Zapruder's long line, which is really short phrases, moving down the page without punctuation, allows the poet to tell stories, yes, but also to interweave surreal transitions, which take us elsewhere for a while, access the subterranean, following the unconscious, and then returning to the main scene and the main characters for yet another dynamite ending. Because of this multi-plane, multi-level voice, when the poem does end, we feel as though we've just been listening to a person, or rather have been in the presence of a mind that contains the complexities of a reality we usually only get hints of, including the shadowy forces of history and desire. Zapruder's voice prefigures some kind of ultimate knowing, which brings us some moments of peace in this disturbing world. His themes include the joys of human contact, the political nightmares of our time, the responsibilities of fatherhood in such a time. The poems are suffused with, dare I say, love, as well as his own vulnerability, which of course further endears the voice to us and helps us trust it. He is a great example of poetry redeeming the human condition even as it struggles with it. For this, and in these times, we can be grateful. So Matthew, wherever you are, I don't see you on the screen. Oh, now I do. Hey, brother, read to us.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? I'm using this microphone. Everybody, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, great. Elliot, thanks so much for that beautiful introduction. Those theories seemed fully unzombified to me. So I just want to thank everyone for inviting me. I'm a big fan of 16 Rivers. It's so cool. You do such great books. And yeah, I just want to echo Prageeta and everyone else and praising the collective endeavor of it all. And Prageeta, your reading was so beautiful. Your poems are amazing. So honored to have you be part of Wave Books. I'm not Prageeta's editor. That's Joshua Beckman. So I get to just watch and admire the books as they emerge. So I can take no credit. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to read a few poems from Father's Day and then a few new ones, including, yeah, something pretty new. So it'll be good to get it out into the air and see how it sounds. I have never read, I don't usually like reading outside, but it's such a beautiful day and I crave any chance now to get out into the air when it's breathable. So anyway, thank you all for listening, and thank you again, Elliot, for that beautiful introduction. This first poem is called 3:14 p.m. It seemed temporarily, chronologically appropriate. 3:14 p.m. This blue pen I'm holding feels carved from a glacier, so my fingers are sad, which is a good way to begin. The me from 1998 says, to the me who of sadness like everything is so tired. And the face of Nazim Hikmet looks down. He says, live like a squirrel, and the earth will someday be an empty walnut, maybe with a little blue light still in it, like this pen, which was not carved, but made somewhere. I often wonder whether anyone from the kitchen, where we used to talk all night about the freedom of the future, is still alive. Or have they all, like me, gone into the business of naming breezes? I named one sorrow magnet and another dangerous agreement. Like a tree, I cried to the sun, I'm your lost child of gold. But the sun said, no, inch your way back to the forest. In 1,000 years, the shadows will tell you who you were, green one. So I wrote a lot of this book kind of right leading up to the last presidential election. You all remember that one? So it's odd to reread it now because I can't tell if it's, I don't know if I'm gonna have to re-identify with these feelings or not. I hope not. So anyway, this was actually a poem that was written pretty close, I think, on the day of the election. So like before we knew, most of us knew what was going to happen, or any of us knew what was going to happen. It's called I Wake Up Before the Machine. I wake up before the machine, made of all the choices we are together not making, lights up this part of Oakland. It's dark, so I can imagine another grid humming in the east. Already people are deciding. It's election day, and I lie in the Western pre-decision darkness and almost hear that silent voice saying, go down there. The coffee needs you to place it in the device. Its next form will help you remember daylight is coming. But dreams do not go away. They just move off and change. Your mind is a tree on a little hill surrounded by grasses that look up and say, Father, wind loves moving through you. And then this one was written kind of into that period of time when I remember, I've looked in the internet and I can't find it, but I have a very vivid visual memory of towards the end of, I believe, 2018, someone from the administration standing under an umbrella and talking about the child separation policy and the children who were in the camps and on the border, and sort of bragging that only 2 of them had died, like that was somehow like a good record. That and I can't find the video of it, so maybe it was like a nightmare, a distilled nightmare, but I don't think so. Anyway, this is and I was thinking about that word custody, how they keep using that word custody, and how odd it is. Like it sort of stands in for so many different things, and what does that really mean to have custody over something, especially in that context. So this is called Our Custody. This year was serious in a dumb way and hilarious like a grave cut into a smile. Dreams constantly died without names. We listened to the earth say nothing and knew everything. The earth a grave we throw words into. Seeds in a dark Arctic closet wait for the new garden, tended by machines. One whose name will become dust said, in the shadow under an umbrella, in our custody only 2 died, so it was a good year. What can we say? They were children and will always be. This is the privilege of poetry. Over someone's shoulder, I read, we should listen to everything. But the more I listen, the more my fingers are lonely in the abandoned house, where the absence of music is a kind of music, as the theorist whose name I forgot wrote. And when I read it, it was so wrong. I gasped, like all my thoughts had been sucked out into the ocean, to crash back in onto my head, where the shadow of a wasp keeps arriving. If only I were truly willing to have a little evil poured into my ear, says the politician inside me, who will never win. I'm almost too busy to vote. It's just me on those days. I'm trying to hear the dark light of a terrarium when it longs to be a park, buried underneath pre-human snow, so I can tell you, which is the privilege of poetry. So I thought it would be, I'm gonna read one more from this book, and then I thought it'd be fun to read poems that I actually wrote, like where I'm sitting right now. So I'll do that in a second. But this is called The Black Bird. I was thinking about, this was before the pandemic, obviously, when I wrote this, but I was thinking about that odd expression when a poem goes viral, and how strange a thing that is to say about a poem. This was, I don't know if this was prescient or just obvious, probably both. Anyway, this poem's called The Black Bird. I wrote a poem once. I thought it was, to be honest, just okay. Then it went viral. Everyone loved it, and soon enough, I almost did too. Though I also knew something nameless, I pushed down ever deeper. I wrote one more, a whole book named after the viral poem. It won all the awards. People even really named a whole conference after it and wept when they even thought about it. It was far too much, so extreme it had to be real, what I had done. Now, whenever I try to write, I feel so afraid of feeling nothing. So I just write house and war and dapple. Everyone smiles and says yes. But really, I just want to get high and sit on the porch of my heart. Yes, of my heart, that's what I said. Where I can watch the city go by and imagine buildings have feelings. But whenever I close my eyes and try to go there, I only see a black bird with a yellow beak staring at me. I keep waiting, but it just stares back at me and does not speak even one word from the other world. So like a lot of people, I got, like when this thing started to happen, I got I was like, oh shit, I have to start gardening, right? Like that's like everybody, I have to garden somehow, like take a new on a new activity. And like, I don't know why that was the one, but anyway, I'm not gifted in that department. But I did plant some sunflowers. I made the mistake of planting them in the garden, which meant they got really big, too big, and then they fell over, which that's another story. But anyway, so I learned my lesson, or a lesson. So this is called Sunflower Poem. I want to fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon, but I stand here in the yard, wondering why I planted the sunflowers yesterday all over the garden, knowing they would never grow nearly tall enough to penetrate the diurnal gloom or turn their heads to follow their lamp. I've never planted anything, but a voice kept saying, now. All afternoon, the leaves, like green coins above my head, made that sound in the single redwood my neighbors planted 60 years ago, so it's still young. And the old skull cloud came to complain for too long about a handsome ice storm that promised to return last winter. The lamp softens all things it nears, so I will go near it, because I need to write the difficult letter that says enough. The skull says it was you who planted the sunflowers. So I slipped through the chipped green gate to ask forgiveness of Our Lady of the Forest. She answered with her silence. I came to you in a dream and told you, put the seeds in the black soil, then forget the deeds of your enemies. And you did. And now those sunflowers will grow tall, and unlike you, they will never die. All April, we stayed inside and drew red trains. We ate burritos like it was the end. The air was sweeter for a good long while. Everything had stopped. So many people we know lost so much so fast. So many others did not come and sit near our door and say, how is your garden? Your little sunflowers, they say, are simple to grow in a line. It is said their heads turn to watch the sun, but they don't at all. No birds ever came to eat the green shoots. My little sunflowers, I watched them poke up through the soft black dirt with that undeserved pride I feel when he writes his name. I did not teach him guitar like I was my dad. I just put him in the car and played the Beatles and drove back and forth through his favorite tunnel. It got dark and light, then so dark again. We have these chairs. I don't know if you can see them. I'm hopeless at building stuff like this. My wife is an urban planner, and she built them with alarming alacrity. And then I wrote this poem for her afterwards. It's called "I See You." You built the chair out of blue pieces from a box. We turned into a ship that lifted toward the rings of Saturn, then passed into the void that waited for him, full of friends. Far from the sun, he loves Pluto. So much we hid the sad news of its recent demotion. You bent down and held the drill. Your hair hung down in that dangerous proximity they warn us in the instructions must be avoided. And all was well. Then you called the man who is known as father and took it in, his endless worry that might be love. Then you filled the bath with tears, laughing with me at our ridiculous fear of the Lego of the dangerous future. Then we sat in the chair together. I placed my foot on your foot. No one was lost. No one watched us watch the sunflowers grow a little as the sun went where it goes. No one watched us watch them grow. Okay, I'm gonna read one last poem. It's a bit longer, so not gruelingly long, but it's really new. And yeah, I thank you for your patience with it, and thank you for listening to the poem. I wrote it. I have a friend whose name is Gabriel Kahane. He's a great composer, a young composer, and he's set some of my poems to music before, but he asked me to write something new for a commission, and so I wrote this, and yeah, we're still working on it, but I think it should be performed sometime this summer. So it's called Final Privacy Song, and thank you so much again for listening. And that's the only thing I should say is that in the middle of this poem, I start talking about Li Bai. I read this great biography of him by Ha Jin that I really recommend. It's called The Banished Immortal. And so all the details about Li Bai in this poem are stolen and kind of like misrepresented in this poem. So Though it is true that Li Bai and lots of other poets of that that Tang Dynasty made their own immortality pills. That's in the poem, and that is in fact true. I don't recommend that. Apparently, they were toxic and hastened their death. So anyway, final privacy song. I woke up in California wondering, can all this information we allow whoever they are to gather ever learn to put out these autumn fires before they begin? Figures walk up the hill, not wearing their masks. Here in this room all morning, I sat breathing filtered air. In my head, that song, when I die, please bury me underneath an old oak, and do not tell this screen where I've gone. Across the bridge, the city slept. Soon, calm new questions behind giant windows will wake. How many metal trees will it take to reverse the past? Should we plant them in the desert where only spirits go? Can we learn to breathe smoke? Under Mission, under the Armory, under the silent buses with tinted windows, there's a river they call a creek. It really does still flow. You can read about it in a book called Vanished Waters. I will not purchase from Amazon. Pointless little rebellions versus the ghosts of the corpseless ones. I got a ride here one September at the end of the Quiet Age. We drew the names of our bands with black Sharpies we stole from the office of someone's dad, then hung posters in constant rain. No matter how much din we made, no one could hear. We knew under the perfectly damaged hues of our hair, we would meet at the crumbling palace, its walls flickering unwatchable films of films by friends of friends inhabiting dingily grand apartments landlords barely remembered they owned. Intricate chandeliers swayed above meticulous cabinetry in every harmless quake. Those rooms, who lives in them now? I slept in one surrounded by fog. Someone before me had painted it the exact color of the sun just before it disappears. Each night I closed my eyes and crossed the famous bridge, moving north toward the redwoods, holding a letter to no one. I wanted a place high in that endless green that said, far too late, don't fall asleep in the dream. Each morning, past the now dark bars, our manic joy so lit up a few hours ago, we walk inside a personal cloud of music to our pretend jobs, pass without seeing the ghosts of the two villages on each bank of the creek before the settlers came and gave the lake a new name, Dolores. Now it's a sad waterless pool full of human toys, scientifically lonely with desire. It's so terribly simple to forget the Ohlone lived here until they died, or were taken north in little boats across the bay to build their own hospital where they could die from our diseases. One day, my dad on business flew in for an hour. He took me to an establishment that glittered its every surface with available joy and remarked, "You have no door." Then we went up the wooden stairs to that famous room of poetry where you can still talk to the dead, hear that old song, its dark, secret answer, and look down on the city with its gold windows that seem to know what passes cannot remain. For a pitiless moment, I saw my father standing there when he was young, then choosing whatever would lead to me watching him remember. Then he went back across the country to where I grew up twisted under Maryland elms. Now he is wherever those spirits who sat with us during those long extinct afternoons of doing nothing have gone, leaving us under these black clouds full of smoke that will not disperse. I read the news. It does not deliver what I need, not to die every day. So I pick up the blue book that says, 1,000 years ago, the poet Lee slept in the dim old tavern, his white hair glowing, until Feng 7 found him and bought 2 fish. Then Lee said, Feng wrote it down, the sleeves of poetry are wet with false tears, amber wine, and smeared calligraphy spelling out these immortal words. I am the echo of drunken teenagers in the yellow tower. Deliver me to the emperor, or throw me in the fire. Or best of all, tie me to an arrow and shoot me into the yard of that beautiful widow who moved away long ago, so I can talk about her. Said, I was born to ask if you can hear the wind, so green. Say, the door to the great rebellion is almost here. I know these immortality pearls are killing me, but I take them anyway. There's no time left to learn the sword. So let's drink and decorate our despair until that final morning of sick rain before the Civil War. Set it into the silence of the candle that comes through the window to me, carried on eerie music of the hour. Is it coming from the leaves? The rain is almost here. Cellos leak to that same darkness, a golden door. At last, the smoke is blowing out through the gate to the sea. I hear the emperor shift in his bed. He can't remember who he ordered to watch us, or the name in which we did all these things, written on this glowing, organic, light-emitting diode doom scroll I'm looking down on, here at the end, as it moves endlessly down. Oh, analytical daylight. I hear that old song that says we were born when we fell asleep next to each other, under those huge nameless trees, that when they burn will not return, no matter what we invent, or how alive and strong they look to us in dusk. Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for the poems that are so real and so relevant. I keep thinking about the one about the viral poem, and then I think about books. So I urge you all to imagine retreating from the internet and sitting in your favorite chair or outside under a tree with a book and absorbing these poems that way. What a pleasure that could be, right? So that's a pitch for books. Matthew's book, all the books that are out there of the poets you love. We're going to take a few minutes now for questions and answers with Matthew and Prageeta and Stella Baratlis, who's in our press too, and manning the dials and the widgets and the whatever else it is. She's going to navigate the chat room and share. If you have any questions, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but if you got any questions, quickly type them in, or maybe there already are questions. I hope so. And then I'll come back and close it out in about 10. So Stella, you want to take over?
Sure. So hello, everyone. We have built in about 10 minutes for Q&A for both Prageeta and Matthew. So what I'm hoping that we can do is, if you would like to ask a question of one of our poets, and you want to unmute yourself and actually speak on the mic and ask the question directly, please put a little dot in the group chat and I'll see that it's coming from you. And that way that'll kind of let me keep track of the people who I'm going to call on. Otherwise, you can also type in your message into the chat, or your question into the chat. And then I'll see it, and then I'll make sure that the poet for whom it's intended sees the question. So, okay, go. I don't see any questions yet. So we'll give you some reaction time and maybe play some Jeopardy music. I wanted to thank Aiden Cahill for playing guitar for us at the opening of the reading, and also during our little fundraising pitch break. You are wonderful, and it was just perfect. So anybody have a question? This is what we're waiting for. If you have a question, I'd love you to go down to the little chat command on your command bar, click on it, and type a little dot, a period, something. an asterisk into the chat window, and then we'll call on you. I know, like, I'm totally, come on people, I'm trying to get these questions rustled up here, but Matthew just reminded me, no questions, it's perfectly okay. Prageeta and Matt, I hope that you can see in the chat that you're getting like lots of really nice remarks and feedback about the reading. And I have to agree, it's just been wonderful to hear both your work. And yes, that was not grammatically correct, but. All right, so it looks like, I'm gonna guess that we have no questions, Elliot.
Okay, well,
Right.
that's fair enough. You know, let's just call everybody speechless. And that's fine, because that was so powerful. I hope that was powerful for all of us. Again, challenging. These are challenging times, and it was challenging for us to have our fundraiser this way. We hope it worked for you to the degree anything works these days. But there's nothing like getting a book in your hands, you know, pandemic, schmandemic, right? Politics, schmolitics, it doesn't matter. Get a book of poetry in your hands, sit under a tree, and be transported. And so we want to thank you all really deeply from the bottom of our hearts for spending some of this beautiful Northern California afternoon with us, the one that Matthew was referring to. There's still some time to go out and enjoy it. I'll give a pitch again. I guess I'm sounding like a broken record, but poets and artists do attempt to express the ineffable. And when ineffable truth and transcendental beauties cross over the transom, become a communication between one human being and another, then something has shifted. I like to believe we have made progress in this world, and perhaps through such experiences, we can be a part of the movement that will help save what we love. And we all know that is up front and center now. So thank you to our poets. Thank you to 16 Rivers Press. And thank you to you, readers of poetry and attendees today. Most gracious thanks.
I love the idea of unmuting ourselves and just clapping at this point, because it is nice to hear.
Stella, you can do it. Do it.
I can mute everyone, but I don't think I can unmute everyone. So unmute yourselves and clap for our poets, all of them here. Thank you.
Hooray!
Bravo, bravo.
Well done, poets. Terrific.
Yay.
Matt and Prageeta, terrific job.
Thank you so much. Both
Thank
of
you.
Extraordinary. Thank you.
Lovely work.
The recording was stopped.
Now you can say what you really think.
Terrible things. Snort laugh. Can I snort laugh?
Everyone's being naughty now. So since I was the Zoom organizer, what I'm going to do is I'm the one that ends the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and press end. Fantastic to see y'all, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stella.
Welcome.